We have school starting in the next couple of weeks in this area, and what parent doesn't want their child to have the right education? Well, that same thought process, you want the same thing when it comes to developing your child through either fitness or for athletics. That's why we're continuing our series today on long-term athletic development, or LTAD, today with Charlie Marlowe on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. Good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Garrett Williamson. I'm president of Personal Edge Fitness and the host of the podcast. Here with me is Charlie Marlowe, one of our exercise coordinators. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Garrett.
Glad to have you back talking about this subject, abbreviated LTAD. Now, Charlie will get in to tell us a little more about that and also the first phase of it, but I want to let you know how to get in touch with the show if you have any questions about this subject or any others. Now, you can reach out to us at 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach us at my email address, which is Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com, which, of course, is our website, and our Facebook page. Hit me up on Twitter at Team PE if you want to contact us that way. So, all right. Now, what we're talking about today is the first stages of the LTAD system. But real quick, if you would give us a brief description of what LTAD is. So
LTAD is basically a system of training where we're focusing on the developmental process of the athlete or the client rather than their chronological age. And so with these two, active start and fundamentals, the active start is going to start between ages 0 to 6. So just starting out toddler age. And then your fundamentals is going to be males being 6 to 9 and females 6 to 8.
And that actually, that number is kind of a recommendation. It's just, we don't really have a point of reference for that outside of age. But the big thing here is telling folks not to really focus on the chronological number, correct? I mean, that's kind of the basis of the program, right?
Exactly. So we're given a range there because those developmental processes are supposed to be happening during that range, but it could be early in the range, late in the range, but as long as you're in that time period, then you're good.
Basically dependent on client to client or athlete to athlete, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
I got
Very
you.
individualized.
I got you.
And so basically, what is going to be the goal of these two stages? And that's going to be building a base.
Right. Okay.
And so when you think about building a base, something that I like to talk about is physical literacy when it comes to the young athletes.
Okay, back up.
Yeah.
Physical literacy. Okay,
Yep.
my mom has a master's degree in English. Except on the podcast, I usually speak rather well, but physical literacy. What is that?
Yeah, and so physical literacy is going to be basically it's a combination of all human movements, whether that be from sport or just your daily activities, that comes together and helps you engage in a healthy, active lifestyle, whether that be towards your sport or just your lifestyle in general. And so,
would this be like a kid understanding the movements? Is that right or not? Right. Or making the mind-body connection? Or?
Exactly. Like just having a good comprehension of like what a squat is for, what muscles are working in certain exercises and stuff, and understanding what your body is doing like in space and knowing what's going on. And this carries over just well on into adulthood and the rest of your life. Right. Why physical literacy is so important is because we see it all the time. People come to us because they might not feel comfortable going in a gym and running a workout for themselves. Right. And so this is where physical literacy comes into play. If you have a good understanding of those basic human movements, then you can go into a gym and figure out how to train yourself and how that could be beneficial for you. And so that's why physical literacy is very important to learn at a young age. Okay,
but we're not going into a gym and I mean hit machines and stuff with this age. You're talking about doing this through basic moves of some sort.
Correct. And so basically with the youth, I've said in the last podcast that kids aren't miniature adults. And so how we would train a kid is going to be very different from how we would train an adult. And the way we like to do that is going through progressions and regressions. And so you would take a very simple exercise let's just take a squat, for example, and there's several ways to make it harder or to regress and make it a little simpler. And so depending on where that individual is developmentally is where we're going to put them on that progression regression scale.
And when you're talking about progression, just so our listeners understand, the progression regression is not a negative thing. It's just
not at all.
Adapting. Tell me, correct me if I'm wrong. Adapting the exercise to meet where the child is.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so, like I was saying, with the body weight or with the squat, and so you could go all the way into like a barbell squat, which is considered pretty advanced, or you could do a body weight squat. And the way you would progress a body weight squat, just add in tempo. So by slowing the movement down, pauses at the bottom, things like that.
Sure.
There's different ways to increase the stress on the muscle without going to necessarily more advanced exercise. And so depending on where they're at developmentally, we can plug and play different exercises and progressions and regressions in order to help the developmental process to string it along so we can get the most out of that.
I got you. Okay. So what do we, and this may be difficult because especially 0 to 6, I know there are some limitations obviously in what we're doing, but can you give us some examples of some of the things that they would actually do around, and when you're talking about these fundamental movements, give me some examples of what you're talking about. So, I mean, squat, yes, but what else?
So, there's several actually that I like to throw in a session with these stages of athletes and clients. And so a few of them would be running, jumping, crawling is a big one. I actually do that a lot with my adult clients.
I've seen you do that with pretty much all ages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very, some I throw in the warm up a lot because it's very good for your vestibular system, getting your balance involved and challenging your brain, but also it's a full body movement where you have to coordinate your muscles to work together and involves your core. And so, crawling is a big one. Throwing medicine balls is another big exercise that I like to incorporate by using med balls just to do throws, catches, things of that nature. And
this is all basic. That's what he's talking about this being basic, especially in the active start area. I mean, these are activities that your child's going to take part of anyway. But there's a lot of, like he's saying, fundamental development going on at those times. And I'm going to pick on one of them being crawling. Yeah. Because I remember when we taught gymnastics, that's one of the things we had the kids do. We called it bear crawl. We made it fun and talked about that. But I knew the physiology of what was going on there.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, hip mobility, the work on the cerebellum of balancing and using all four for feet and legs and hands on the ground. So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was going to say also to add on that I like to say the ABCs, and that would be agility, balance, coordination, and speed. I throw that one on the end. And so doing that in a fun, enjoyable manner, like you said. So with the crawls, I mean, you throw all kinds of names on there, like bear crawl, crab crawl, monkey crawl. There's different things you can, make it more enjoyable for the kids, and and that way they're having fun doing it. Because I mean, just as well as I do, if they're not having fun doing it, it's a lot more likely that they're not going to want to pay attention. They're not going to want to do it. And so just by, finding fun and creative ways to disguise the exercise as that playful activity is something that really carries over well when you're dealing with youth athletes.
I love that, because that's I hear parents talk about that all the time, that the play is kind of gone.
Yeah.
In a couple of different ways. One thing with kids on the couch too much, not doing anything. But the second thing is the fact that because it seems that at younger and younger ages, we're getting more and more aggressive and going down to that danger that you were talking about last week of being involved in basically singly minded about their sport at such an early age, and you're taking the fun out of it. You're so in this program you're talking about making sure that's there, making sure that's a point in there. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing as well, as far as these two stages, is strength training is introduced in these phases. And so, like I said,
very key here.
Yeah, it's very key. And so, a lot of times we'll get parents that ask us, like, well, is my kid old enough to participate in strength training? And to that, I would like to say that common jumping activities that children go through all the time on the playground, they're experiencing 2 to 5 times force go through their body, and 2 to 5 times body weight. And so basically, you know, when a kid hits the ground, they're experiencing 2 to 5 times body weight force go through their entire body. And so when you look at that comparing to, you know, doing either body weight exercises or, you know, very light dumbbells,
resistant bands, exercises,
bands, or medicine balls, it's not comparable. So they're doing stuff that's a lot more quote unquote dangerous than strength, you know, basic strength training. So
well, and when we talk about, it's funny you mentioned the jumping, because that's I find the exact almost opposite with adults, that will have an adult, something I do with a lot of my senior clients even, and have them actually jump, get both feet off the ground at the same time. That's a fear that comes in as our lifestyles change and we stop doing these things, and that's what attributes to bad balance. But it's the point I'm making is the fact that they think the exact thing, that why am I doing this simple kid activity, you know, and what have you. They think, wow, that's so below me, I guess you'd say. And what you're saying is this is a concern that parents have about kids getting involved in resistance training, but they're actually doing these plyometric exercises, and they should be. Their bodies are made to handle it. They're made to do this. But there is a big difference in just, well, the question we get all the time about whether or not my is Johnny too young to strength train. This is the system that Charlie's talking about. That's the way to introduce them to them. That's the way to bring them through it safely and evaluate their level. Correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And going back to the progressions and regressions, and so, you know, starting them with a basic strength conditioning program.
Sure.
You know, you start them there, and as they continue to progress and make adaptations in that exercise, you know, you increase the load or the volume, whatever that may be.
Right.
Make the exercise more difficult, and by starting, you know, somewhere small like that, instead of starting at a more advanced exercise, you leave more room for growth. And so that's what we're trying to do. You know, you're not gonna, by doing this and, you know, starting at a regression and not starting at something that's super advanced, you're not going to see slower strength gains. You're not going to, it's not going to impair your growth at all. You're going to see, you know, same strength gains that anybody else is going to see. But what we're trying to push is that at the end of the day, you're going to be more likely to have less injuries and be healthier playing your sport.
And it's interesting. There's an article, and I'm bringing this up because Charlie actually saw this today. It was rather timely since we're doing this.
Exactly. Yeah.
But of all people, talking about exactly this situation, this developing at the right ability, right ages, and what have you. Tell us about the article that name all of you are going to know. Dr. Jim Andrews just put a piece out about this. Yeah,
it's crazy that you mentioned that, because right before we sat down to record, I was like, oh my gosh, you got to see this article I just came across. I was like, this is perfect. And so he released an article basically saying exactly what we've been talking about, is that, you know, a lot of youth athletes are seeing overuse injuries, torn ACLs, Tommy John, and a lot of it is attributed to year-round playing of a single sport and not getting that physical literacy and building that base that they should have at that age. And so he's seeing a lot of that, and I mean, I think it's awesome that he's speaking out against it, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and parents, they might think, you know, like, this is what my kid needs, the exposure, so that, you know, coaches see him and he's playing against better competition. And I'm glad that somebody who is, you know, well respected in the field is coming out and you know, addressing the issue.
Well, if anybody would know the injuries, I mean, Jim Andrews definitely would know the injuries.
Oh, for sure.
What I'm thinking is, since this article just came out, I mean, you just saw it today, that he must have heard our podcast.
I mean,
that's got to
be the answer. I mean, I don't know how else he would have thought about releasing that. So.
Well, and we want to stress there that this is not a system that's going to hold your athlete back.
Oh,
in fact, it's going to move them forward. It's going to move them forward. It's safer, definitely.
Yep.
But as important is, you know, you're after making those changes. You're after increasing for your child, taking care of your child, making sure it's safe. But at the same time, gosh, he's got great potential. You know, I want him to make the team, whatever. This ain't going to hold him back. You know,
definitely not.
And in fact, there's other research you've seen on physical literacy itself. I mean, Dr. Andrews is not the only one talking about this.
Definitely not. Yeah,
definitely.
Earlier I was telling you there's a journal in 2018, the Strength Conditioning Journal, just talking about the impact that physical literacy has on us as we age, and to having that exposure at a young age, and how that plays a part in our active lifestyle as we get older. And so, kind of how I touched on, the more you're active in a variety of sports and just being exposed to different movements, that's gonna carry over when you're older and you're having to figure out, all right, now I don't play a sport anymore, I'm not as active as I once was. What are some ways that that I can maintain active lifestyle?
Sure, exactly, and that's what's so important about starting this at a young age. When I've said many times on the show that I was a gymnastics instructor for years, and which kind of led me into this, part of the things that led me into this field, and what we realized were the kids that started at a very young age in gymnastics, we weren't talking about this. We were talking about doing hot dog rolls and puppy dog races and bear crawls and whatever. But what they were learning is they were inherently learning basics of the beginnings of this, of physical literacy.
Exactly.
And I always said that those kids, they learned how to fall at an early age, so they developed well as far as that goes, and became really good at other sports strictly because they had that foundation. If you could, and you may have already done this, but make it clear the two different sections you're talking about today, that your 0 to 6 active start and fundamentals, the 69 for males and 6 to 8 for females. What are the differences? Give us a little more details on that, if you don't mind.
So I mean, active start 0 to 6, we're probably not going to see as many, really any of those clients, but it's good information for parents to know as they're dealing with kids that age. Is that's what they need, is just a wide variety of exposure to different movements, different things of that nature.
That's why play is so important.
Exactly. Play is a crucial role of just a kid's development. And touching on the active start, I'm sure you see it just as much as I do, is kids these days, they're getting more screen time on their phones. And I've read several articles lately just how big of a how much that can affect their postural muscles, and just always being hunched over in a flexed position, looking at their phone. I mean, this is toddlers, kids that, I mean, I'd be shocked that a little 2 or 3 year old knows how to work an iPhone, but they can't maybe hang from get up and hang, or they can't do these gross motor skills that they should be able to do at a certain point, but their fine motor skills might be more developed. And so that's where you can start to see some issues there, because your gross motor skills should form a basis for your fine motor skills. And so if you see that reversed and you start to develop those fine motor skills before some of the gross motor skills, you might see some developmental delays, and when you try to get more advanced in the training. And
when you get to the 6 to 8, now you're doing some more targeted moves and what have you. This is when we're getting into your basic body weight stuff. Am I right? I don't want to go wrong.
Exactly. So I mean, the fundamentals, like I said, we're trying to create a fun, enjoyable environment to teach fundamental movement skills to the clients. And so it's going to be a lot of just teaching, like going through games, activities that teach the form of the exercise, different, like I said, jumps, throws, incorporating these different positions and movements in different games that the kids are having a good time while they do it, but it's repetition. It's ingraining that movement pattern into their day, and so the more they do it, the more likely it's gonna connect in their mind, and that's what we're trying to teach, is in a safe and fun environment.
That connection in your mind, that's something that I talk to a lot of clients about in balance. It's funny when he's working on LTAD and he's talking about working with developing children and developing athletes and what have you. I'm automatically going to go. I'm going to go to the senior senior realm, and then think about that, because it's the same way. And the reason I say it's the same way is that we actually start to regress. And what I mean by regress in this situation is actually go backwards as time passes on the calendar, not because time passes on the calendar, but our lifestyle changes. Therefore, we stop doing these things. And back to what you were saying, the movements that they're doing, they're starting to develop that mind-body connection. They're starting to understand where they are in space. Mm-hmm. That's what we lose because we stop doing those activities. And I talk all the time to parents, to adults, about working on those neural pathways in the cerebellum that control your balance and control your movement. What Charlie's talking about is starting at, 0 to 6 is the first phase of this, starting to develop that then, and encouraging that on through 6 to 8. But like you say, make it fun.
Exactly. Yeah, that fun is key, and so that's what we try to push and in the fundamentals, and I think that that's why it makes it successful. So every
time he wrote in my notes that he gave me, every time he wrote fundamentals, he capitalized FUN. It's very important. Key. Exactly. Well, and we were talking about that. That is that's a big key of how we approach every training session here anyway. I mean, the Hollywood image of a trainer is that somebody's going to yell and scream at you until you bang your head against the wall until you throw up, and they're going to laugh and keep doing it. That's not personal training. If it's something you dread every single day, I promise you're going to quit. You're not going to keep developing, and you do that with a child.
Yeah, and
you're going to have burnout.
Exactly, yeah, and that's one of the things we talked about on the last episode. Is one of the early risks of specialization at a young age is burnout, and and so, but yeah, don't get me wrong. We're going to work hard when you come up here. You're going to sweat. Like we're here to work, and we're here to get better, but at the same time, like I said, it's important to find the balance of hard work and fun and not make it miserable and something that they enjoy coming to, something that they look forward to coming to.
I would think that, and I haven't seen any studies on this, but I think the top 2 reasons why an athlete, a good athlete doing real well in a sport, leaves the sport. And the top 2, and I'm not sure which is number 1, but injury, obviously, which, again, that's what we're addressing here. Overuse injuries, this kind of thing. And number 2, it's just not fun anymore.
Exactly.
And that's what we always called burnout, but burnout is it's just kind of a meaningless term.
Yeah.
The real meaning behind it is it's not fun anymore.
Yep.
Didn't enjoy it.
Right. And so we see it a lot for sure.
Definitely, and that's in kids all the way up. But of course, we're talking about working with the kid development. Now we're going to we've got a few other things. Tell us what we've got coming up. We've got a few other different sections that we're going to go through as we develop these athletes.
Yeah, and so the next stage of LTAD is going to be your learn to train, and so that's going to be your males 9 to 12 and your females 8 to 11.
Okay.
And like we said before, it's just a range that it could be anywhere from that range. Some develop more earlier than others, and so that's just what we're trying to ingrain in kids in around that age period. Right.
And one of the things I want to drive home on this is that 6 to 8. You're already saying you've got it in your notes here. I want to make sure it's pointed out again. And that is, strength training does begin there. We've got the basics of strength training in that developmental period. So making sure that we're not scaring any parents away. This is the difference between working with a qualified staff, everybody having a degree in the field of either exercise science, physiology, kinesiology, sport medicine, athletic training, as Personal Edge does, different than just somebody that's a personal trainer or just somebody that's a coach. Because, like you're saying, understanding how to develop the athlete, like Dr. Andrews said, about not getting that singularly focused and avoiding those, I would say, older injuries. Where athletes that are a different level, much higher level, are experiencing. We shouldn't be seeing those in kids.
And one of the things Dr. Andrews said in his article, and I even quoted it and posted on my social media, is that he thinks and promotes that kids should be take off several months, 2 to 3, 4 months from their sport and dedicate that to strength training, focusing on mobility, conditioning, and using that time period away from their sport so that they can improve in those other physical qualities, those general qualities. And I think that's, a perfect time to come up Personal Edge, a place like this where
Right.
you can focus on that, and you're getting quality training from professionals who have an educational background in the field.
Right, and making sure that your kid's not going to get hurt during this. We kind of straddle it. It seems like a tough fence to straddle, and keeping a child safe, and at the same time teaching him these. In many cases, you look at most of your Olympic training. These are very advanced moves,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be done. It can be done very safely, and it takes using a system like this to understand the each developmental stage, which is why we're taking so long going through the different podcasts to go through each one of these developmental stages. Now, we just touched on some of these. I want to make sure I didn't leave anything out, but I'm sorry if I did. Please let me know.
No, you're good. Yeah, that's it.
Well, we wanted to make sure we at least touch on these and tell you what we can about them. But if you have any more questions, if this raises some questions about where your child is and how you're developing them, and especially if they're an athlete, especially if they're not an athlete. I mean, we see so many parents wanting their kids to learn how to work out correctly. Reach out to us. We'd love to do a free consultation with you and talk to you a little more about this. You can reach out. You can call the show at 251-278-3343. You can also reach out to me at Garrett, Garrett, at Personal Edge Fitness. Reach out to Charlie at charlie@personaledgefitness.com. We'd be more than glad to answer your questions about this. Charlie and I have talked about this. This is something I love to hang my hat on.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had the possibility of teaching everybody how to work out correctly, then the two of us, I think my life would be very much complete.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would love it.
I'd give anything for that. So love to talk to you about that. Reach out to us through the website, personaledgefitness.com, and our Facebook page. Hit me up at Team PE. We want to do everything we can to take care of your developing athlete, your developing adolescent, your developing child, and make sure that they're not doing this and answer your questions about strength training. Make sure they're doing it well. Make sure they're reaching their level of wellness. Stay tuned. We've got some more episodes coming out talking about LTAD. Charlie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you joining me. Y'all come back and hear the rest of the story. Take care.